Welcome to Shell Sugar Rush. Welcome back if you've been here before. Today I'm going to be making a special game cake for a special birthday guy who is a very big gamer, very big fan of Xbox One. So this cake is going to have a controller on top, which I'm going to make with Rice Krispie treats and fondant. So if you enjoy things like this, stick around and watch me put it together. And don't forget, if you haven't already, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you'll be notified when I upload more videos in the future. So let's make an Xbox One cake.
So for the controller, I started with 6 Rice Krispie treats and just put those together kind of in a way that would suffice for the cutout that I had of my controller. And I kind of just pushed them together to make one rectangular shape, and then put that cutout on top and just trace that, with a sharp knife. And then I just went around kind of shaping and curving and smoothing those edges. Now here I'm just covering it with some chocolate ganache. I wanted something that would set a little heavier than buttercream and, kind of give it that nice smooth finish as, I get ready to cover it with fondant. So I'm just going to cover it really good here with a nice coat, getting into all the grooves. And then I'm going to pop this in the fridge for a little bit so that ganache can set and work on some fondant. So now that our ganache is chilled, I'm going to just clean up the controller a little bit along the edges. And I'm going to roll out some black fondant and start with the back of the controller. I'm just going to roll it out and then lay that controller on top and just trace it to cut out a piece for the back. And there we have our nice smooth back. And then I'm going to roll out another piece and just cut that out, big enough to cover the front. And then I will just go around and smooth that down into all the grooves and curves on my controller. And then just with a paring knife, just shave off that excess fondant around the edges there. And I'm going to take my fondant tool here and make the lines and grooves that are actually on the controller itself, just to give it that, that more realistic look. And I'm just taking the sharp edge of the fondant tool and just making those grooves. And here I'm taking my small fondant roller, and I'm using the end of it, the curved ends, to make three of the kind of sunken in places in the remote where they actually hold the little finger controllers, and the one that holds the symbol that's kind of just a cross shape. So here I'm utilizing my icing piping tips to cut out the circles I need for this. That's just what I found was best as far as size and shape. So here I'm just cutting out the circles for the 2 controller pieces and just putting those in the areas where I indented with the fondant roller. And then I also cut out a piece that I'll just take take the edge of one of my scrapers, because it's a edge with a 90-degree angle, and I'm taking that edge and just going to mash down on 4 sides to create that cross for that particular button with the cross on it. And here I'm doing that here, and also just kind of cleaning it up with the fondant tool as well. And since I kind of mashed on it a bit and pushed it out, I did take my piping tip and just cut that out again to get it nice, in that nice circular shape once again before I put it on there. Now here I'm just working on the 4 small circles to the right of the controller, and then the larger white circle in the center. And for all of those little circles, I basically just took a little piece of fondant and just rolled it into a ball the size I needed in my hand, and kind of smushed it and then put it in the appropriate area. And then of course for the little circle at the top, which of course that's where the X goes for Xbox, and I call it the high X because it's kind of off center. And I just rolled out 2 little pieces of black fondant real small in my between my fingers and put in there to make that cross. Now here I'm actually making the letters for the circles that I've put on there, that that have the A, the Y, the X, and the B on them. And I again took just a tiny piece of fondant and rolled it between my fingers to make these letters. You know, I thought about painting it on, but with the food color, it's just not good enough to show up on the black fondant. So I actually had to use fondant for these. So this was a bit tedious. And I'll probably in the future maybe invest in some poppy paints because I think they'll actually show up well on the fondant. And here I'm just finishing up those two smallest circles in the center of the controller and utilizing some white food coloring to paint on the lines and boxes. And our controller is complete. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. So for the rest of the decorations, I am just going to roll out some black fondant and I'm cutting out some stars, just some decent sized stars here. And I'm going to actually attach those to some floral wire. And I'm going to be sticking those in the top of the cake behind the remote. So I'm just going to set those aside so they can harden up a little and roll my fondant back out, and I'm going to start cutting out the letters that I'm going to use on the cake board around the cake. And for this I just have a standard set of alphabet letters. They're cutters and they have a little handle on them on the top, and I probably use these more than any other letters that I have just because they're really easy and the height is perfect for going around on the cake board, you know, outside of a cake for putting that birthday message. And they're real easy to use. I just dust them usually with a little cornstarch to begin with to make the fondant easy to slide out. And then I use my fondant tool, you know, on the back side if it needs a little help. Just you know, getting pushed out of that cutter. But I just really love these particular letters in this font style. Now here I'm rolling out a little more of the black fondant that I'm going to use for a background for a banner that I'm going to put on the cake that will say level 40. So for this I'm using some of my neon green for the letters, just so they'll kind of pop, but I just wanted a little something more to put around the cake to just give it that extra pizzazz. And I'm just going to adhere the letters onto the black background with a little water, and once I've got them, you know, where I want them to be, then I'm just going to take my paring knife and cut each of the sides to you know, kind of give it that rectangular shape and get it to the size that I want for the side of the cake. So now that's ready to go, and we'll put those aside and get started on our cake. So for the cake, I've actually baked 2 8-inch pans of marble cake, and I've torted those so that we'll have 4 layers in this cake, so we have a really good ratio of cake to icing to cake. But for my icing, I have actually colored the buttercream with a neon green, just because this is the color that's also going to be on the outside of the cake. And here I've just given a, you know, generous layer of icing between each, in the center of each layer. And I am doing a nice crumb coat on the outside and just smoothing that down. And then I'm going to pop that in the fridge to chill for a bit. And then we'll bring it back out and do our final coat. So our cake is chilled and is ready for our final coat. And first I'm going to take my paring knife and just scrape off the top of those edges that I left on when I crumb coated. And I'm going to put just a nice generous final layer on here. And I am going to use my scallop scraper just to give this a scallop texture because I think it will go well with the theme that we're doing. Okay, so now we're ready to add our decor to the cake. And I'm going to be using a little bit of piping gel for this. I just feel like it keeps it a little more secure. So I'm using the piping gel to adhere the banner to the front of the cake and also to adhere those letters to the cake board as well. It just, like I said, makes me feel a little more secure about the fact that they won't be moving around very easily. And once I've got the letters all attached to the board, then I am going to go ahead and take some of my black buttercream and just pipe a border. And this is just a simple shell border with one of my star tips. I'm piping this border around the top edge of the cake and then of course around the bottom edge as well. And then I'm going to grab my remote, which is ready, and kind of put that, I'm positioning it towards the front of the cake and taking those stars and putting them across behind the remote. I really like that kind of celebration element that the stars gave to the cake.
Okay guys, there's our finished cake. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up. And don't forget, if you haven't already, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you'll be notified when I upload more videos like this. See you next time.